Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, April 18th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, we know it's been a very busy week. If you listen to my show, I'm on 6 days a week, and we covered a lot of those stories dealing with Dante Wright and continuous coverage of the Derek Chauvin trial as well. So be sure to go back and listen to the archived episodes that we have on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep, IMHOTEP. All right. So on today's show, I want to deal with a few stories I have not been able to get to during the week because of some other stories that we've been covering. I saw a story on MSNBC back on April 9th about a African-American family that had their beachfront property. It was a beach resort in Southern California. They had that property seized in 1924, and now they could actually get that property back. And this is a very, very important story. This is in the city of Manhattan Beach. Nearly a century ago, the city of Manhattan Beach shuttered a resort that belonged to Willa and Charles Bruce. Though the county is trying to give the land back, the city has declined to apologize. All right. And this deals with a history of racism and discrimination against African Americans, and it deals with a history of us having our land stolen after the Civil War ends and going into the 1920s. We're going to acquire, some estimates are close to 20 million acres of land, but there were various ways that our land was stolen from us. We know that African American farmers have lost about 92% of their land. They lost somewhere around 12 million acres of land over about a century. Okay. And there are various ways, not outside of domestic terrorism and African Americans being ran off their land. There are different ways that our land was taken away from them. And in this instance, land was taken away from this family because of what's known as eminent domain. Eminent domain. We also saw that in Seneca Village in the New York area as well. So we're going to talk about this story. Then also there was a story I saw back around April 9th, April 10th. I posted an article from face-to-faceafrica.com about it as well. This deals with Egypt, but specifically it deals with ancient Egypt, and it deals with a lost city in ancient Egypt that was just revealed. Okay. And this is a city that existed that dates back about 3,400 years ago. Okay. It's called a lost golden city. It dates back about 3,400 years ago and is said to be the most important discovery in Egypt since the tomb of King Tutankhamun was discovered in 1922. Okay, so we're going to talk about this lost city of ancient Egypt, or ancient Kemet, that was uncovered. Okay, and it was just revealed. This was just revealed. Then I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. I'm a panelist each Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And we talked about a number of different stories, but there was one story out of Texas that we talked about. And this story deals with at a Texas high school district. You had some ninth graders they had this type of online auction. It was a African-American students and the peers, other students of color, but it was this virtual online auction, a slave trade type auction. And they were doing this in a group message. Okay. So this has caused an outrage from a lot of parents, rightfully so, as well as the NAACP and Texas high schoolers disciplined for slave trading gang that auctioned off classmates based on race. Okay, we're going to talk about this story as well because see, this also ties into um, how people treat you largely has to do with what people know about you. What people know about you is based upon uh, what people think about you. What people think about you is based upon what they've read, heard, and seen about you. Okay. So this ties into the need for America to have a massive history lesson. And the history of, and I've dealt with this topic numerous times before, when we deal with the history of African Americans, is oftentimes improperly taught in schools, especially dealing with the history of slavery. This is at a school district that is overwhelmingly white. We'll talk about this. The Aledo Independent School District there in Texas. But it's a very disturbing story also. And this is why the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History American Slavery is so important. Teaching Hard History American Slavery. And this study documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools all across the country. And it documents ways to more correctly teach the history of slavery as well. Okay. And on the advisory board to put this together is Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries, Associate Professor of History at Ohio State University, Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries. And he is also a nephew of one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. So we've had Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries here on the show before also. All right, but this is a very, very important study. Teaching Hard History American Slavery from the Southern Poverty Law Center. So we'll talk about this story out of Texas as well. And lastly, we know the month of March was the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965. And also, we know the month of March was the 56th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March as well. March 21st, 56th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. Well, there was a story I was trying to get to. We didn't have time to. We're going to do it today in the second hour. This deals with Black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. Black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. We know because of Jim Crow segregation, when African American civil rights workers, when they were traveling throughout the South, they couldn't eat everywhere. They couldn't eat at any restaurant. They had to eat at African American owned restaurants or some type of segregated restaurant. So we'll deal with Black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement from the 1940s to the 1960s. Restaurants in the South became high profile focal points for the civil rights movement because activists understood the powerful effect that desegregating white owned eateries would have on the public's imagination. Restaurants are places where people from different walks of life gather for nourishment, social interaction, and an opportunity to belong to a community. These things go to the heart of what it means to be American. Now, segregationists were heavily invested in preventing interracial dining from becoming a widespread reality because it spoke to something even deeper. When people sit down together for a meal, they can't help but recognize the humanity of those eating with them. In addition, when people prepare food for you, they are letting you know that they care for your survival. In essence, cooking is an act of love. But and for a lot of people in the South, cooking is an act of love, and soul food is part of that also. There was an article from Southern Living, southernliving.com, that talks about black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. So we'll deal with all this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Stand by. All right, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Stand by. How's everybody doing today? It's a busy weekend. Okay, back from break in 3 minutes. Okay. Also, we have a new section. We have a new class starting up Saturday, April 24th. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is an online course that I teach. This one will be a 9-week, 18-hour online course. It's going to be Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Okay, we're going to post a link here in just a second. We'll be back from break in 2 minutes. All right, stand by, everybody.
African American Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, April 18th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. All right. So we have a new online course starting up Saturday, April 24th, 2021. You heard me talk about it. I had to push it back from April 17th. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Now, this is going to be a 9-week, 18-hour online course. We'll meet on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start studying it in 1441 when the Portuguese go into Mauritania. We can't start in the mid 1500s. We can't start in 1619. We have to deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So we deal with ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, Ta-Nehisi, Nubia, Ethiopia. We deal with the Nile Valley region of Africa. We deal with the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt into Europe. And they go in 711 AD. And we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, and how this history leads to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay. So we posted the link here, or you can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's going to start up Saturday, April 24th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is a 9-week, 18-hour online course. I have a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. There's a ton of information. All right. And we deal with the ancient African presence in the Americas also, especially here in the United States of America, before Native Americans even come into existence as well. One of the sources is Dr. David M. Hotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And we deal with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. These were the Khoisan. The Khoisan come from southern Africa. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They go all around the world, and they were here as well. So we know that 2019 was the 400th year anniversary of August 20th, 1619, when the White Lion, when those 29 Africans were on the White Lion pirate ship in Point Comfort there in Virginia, and they were traded for food and water, supplies, things like this. People mistakenly say this is when African people first came to this land. No, we were here for tens of thousands of years before that. And if you go back to 1526, in the territory of South Carolina and Georgia, the Spanish were taking Africans into that territory that's now South Carolina and Georgia. They were taking them there in 1526. That's 93 years before 1619. Okay, so we break all this down in the online course. The class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. We do the classes live. All the classes are archived. You can go back and watch them over and over again. As soon as you register, there's bonus content that you can start watching right away. Okay. All right. So you can register for that right now. Okay. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora, because right now it's corrects your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here. We deal with current events in history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, the 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter, or visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And if you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. All right, I want to go to this first story here. This comes out of California, Manhattan Beach, California. We're going to go to clip one here in just a second, Jalen. I saw some articles about this, and I saw a story on MSNBC April 9th on Weekends with Alex Witt, and I haven't been able to get to this topic here. California beach seized in 1924 from a black family could be returned. New York Times has an article from April 18th about this. There's an article from April 12th from CNN that I read. A black family's beach property in California was taken. It's worth millions. Inside Edition, the article from Inside Edition says the property today is worth $75 million. Nearly a century after Southern California shuttered a beach resort owned by an African-American couple, the city, county, and state are still reckoning on how to right past wrongs. Now, the resort was established by Willa and Charles Bruce in Manhattan Beach, California in 1912 during the Jim Crow era. They built a destination where black tourists could swim, dance, eat, and rest. But in 1924, Manhattan Beach officials invoked eminent domain and condemned the Bruce's land. Now, if you remember, we've talked about, there was a study from YouGov. There was a poll from YouGov, April 4th, 2018. Now, April 4th is a significant date in African-American history, but also American history, because that's the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's assassinated April 4th, 1968. Well, April 4th, 2018, on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King, there was a poll that came out from YouGov that showed that 40% of white people surveyed, I would add, these are the white people who admitted it, 40% of white people surveyed felt that African Americans could be equally as successful if they only tried harder. 40% of African Americans surveyed, who would actually admit it, said that African Americans could be equally as successful as white people if they only tried harder. Now, what I find interesting is when you have polls like this, when you have people that make statements like this. I remember Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law. I remember Jared Kushner said, if African Americans, if Donald Trump's policies are supposed to succeed and help the African American community, African Americans have to want to succeed themselves. You remember little Jared said that? But I find it very interesting when you have people like little Jared, and when you have people who were in this poll, and these, I'm happy these white people admitted it, because I think it's probably 50, 40. I think it's probably at least 50%, maybe 60%. The other 10 to 20% didn't want to admit it. But they never talk about the laws and policies that were put in place, right, to create these structural inequities in the first place. They break it down to African Americans need to try harder, as opposed to leveling the playing field and reversing these policies and laws that were put in place that maldistributed wealth, power, and resources into the hands of white people in the first place. I just find that very interesting that never comes up. Okay, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If hard work was the common denominator to being successful in America, then nobody would be more successful than African Americans. Because who worked harder than a slave for 246 years? Who worked harder than a sharecropper? Who worked harder than somebody on the convict leasing system? Who worked harder than domestics? Who worked harder than African Americans in the Jim Crow South? If hard work was the common denominator to being successful in America, if that was actually true, then no one would be more successful than African Americans. Read this article from Newsweek.com. 40% of whites think black people just need to try harder, poll finds. This is from April 4th, 2018, the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. So when they have polls like this and people have these types of sentiments, they never talk about the laws and policies that were put in place to maldistribute wealth, power, and resources and to take away the land that we had. I just find that very interesting. They just say try harder. But that's not how you got what you got. If you actually understand history, that's not how you got what you got. I'm not saying you didn't have white people to work hard. I'm saying you had an advantage. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. So if we look at this piece here from the New York Times, California beach seized in 1924 from a black family could be returned. Okay, so the resort was established by Willa and Charles Bruce in Manhattan in 1912 during the Jim Crow era. They built a destination where black tourists could swim, dance, eat, and rest. But in 1924, Manhattan Beach officials invoked eminent domain and condemned the Bruce's land. Now the Bruces fought to move, but ultimately lost their business and were paid $14,500, or in today's dollars, $224,603. Okay, adjusted for inflation, for their property. And then they moved to Los Angeles. Okay, now it's interesting because half the people that founded Los Angeles, they were like Afro-Mexicans. They were of African descent. It's very interesting. I mean, it's a very interesting history of this country and how this country got land, because California was part of Mexico. Okay, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, California, Utah, and California, Utah, Nevada, Colorado, in Mexico, Arizona, all that was part of Mexico. And half the people that founded Los Angeles, California, these were people of African descent. So but anyway, let's continue here. Because I just find it interesting. Like you got Marjorie Taylor Greene with this white Anglo-Saxon. They want to have this white Anglo-Saxon American First initiative. And I'm like, do you understand who the original Americans were? Because I just got to sit back and laugh. You can give us a call, 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. I just have to sit back and laugh at some of this simple time and ass nonsense. Okay? I really do. Let me show you something right quick. We're going to continue here. But I just have to show you this, right? Because when you look up, if you go to the 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary and you look up the term American, American didn't originally apply to Europeans. The term American applied to the Aboriginal and copper-colored races that were here, the Aboriginal and copper-colored people that were already here. Well, who was here when Europeans got here? African people and Native Americans. I want to show you this here. You can go online, just search for Noah Webster Dictionary, 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary. This is something actually that we actually discussed in the online class also, but I just want to show you this one slide here, and then we'll continue because all this history is connected. Okay, all this history is connected. Let's look at this. Okay, so if you go to WebsterDictionary1828.com and just search for Noah Webster Dictionary 1828. Okay, Becky said in class with Dr. Carr and Michael, class are on the same time. Okay, that's my man. That's my man, Dr. Greg Carr. I've had Dr. Greg Carr here on the show before. That's my main man, Dr. Greg Carr. I have to get him back on the show also. And we're panelists on Roland Martin Unfiltered as well. Noah Webster Dictionary 1828. If you look up the term American, it says a native of America. A native of America. The term American originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans. This is not me. This is Noah Webster Dictionary. This is what white people are saying. This is who the term American originally applied to, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans. So you have to ask yourself the question, well, wait a second, if the term American originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races that were found here when Europeans got here, then that means the term American didn't apply to Europeans. So who were the original Americans? Well, we've had Dr. David Imhotep here on the show a number of times. The first Americans were Africans. The first Americans were Africans. And then you have Native Americans here. These are the original Americans. African people and Native Americans. And Africans were here. The Khoisan, they were here going back at least 51,700 years ago before Native Americans even came into existence. So when I hear people talk about white Anglo-Saxon culture and all this stuff, well, the Anglos and the Saxons were two groups of barbarians. So you can have Anglo-Saxon culture if you want to. The Anglos, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Lombards, the Picts, the Alans, the Franks, the Vandals, and the Visigoths. These are all groups of European barbarians. And they're going to organize themselves. They organize themselves into kingdoms, and then the kingdoms organize themselves into states or countries. And England is named after the Anglos. That's where England gets its name from, the Anglos. So when I hear them talk about they want to celebrate Anglo-Saxon culture, yeah, go ahead and do that. Because you're showing who you are and you're showing your history. You're showing who you are and you're showing your history. So check this out. Go to history.com, official website of the History Channel. Search for the Barbarians. The Barbarians was about a seven installment series that the History Channel did, maybe 7, 8 installments that they did back in about 2007, I think it was 2007, 2008, called The Barbarians. And each installment, they deal with one of these groups of Germanic people, Vandals, Visigoths, and the Vandals and the Visigoths crushed the western portion of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, which sends Rome into the Dark Ages. And it's going to be the African Moors that go in 711 AD into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal. The teachings that the Moors take from ancient Kemet, from the Nile Valley region of Africa, especially ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, that's going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. This is why I say understand this history. I wish we had never taught them, because all that stuff came back to kick us in the behind. And all this is going to lead to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All that stuff came back to kick us in the behind. Everything got flipped upside down. This is why I say I wish we had never taught them. I wish the Moors had not gone in there, because it didn't benefit. It was to our detriment. So let's continue with this story. But all this is connected. And this is why America has to have a massive history lesson, because this directly impacts what's taking place today, the culture wars that are taking place today, the laws that are trying to be put in place, the 361 laws that Republicans are trying to push through 47 state legislatures, the voter restriction laws. All this comes from a lack of understanding of history. This is why America must have a massive history lesson. Okay, let's go back to New York Times. So the Bruces fought the move, but immediately lost their businesses and were paid paid about $14,000, or in today's dollars, adjusted for inflation, $224,603 for their property. Okay, they moved to Los Angeles. Now, at the time that the land was seized, the city claimed it needed the land for a public park. Okay, but then left it undeveloped for more than 3 decades. So what was this really about? You needed the land for a public park that you seized from this African American family, but you left the land vacant for 3 decades. Now, today, that land is owned by Los Angeles County and is home to a training center for lifeguards. Now, last summer, 2020, activists in Manhattan Beach, along with nationwide demonstrations against racism and police brutality, prompted a resurgence of interest in the Bruces. Okay, and what happened to them? Now, county and state officials are now taking steps to restore the property to the couple's descendants. While officials in Manhattan Beach, a small community of Los Angeles where African American residents make up less than 1% of the population, I'd hate to live there during when Donald Trump was president. Oh my God. But anyway, a plan to commemorate the Bruces with plaques and an art installation. This is what officials in Manhattan Beach plan to do. Now, the city council decided this month of April, that it would not issue a formal apology to the family. Are you afraid that this would strengthen like a lawsuit or something? This would show culpability. You don't want to issue a formal apology. Quote, "We acknowledge and condemn what our city forefathers and some white residents did to Willa and Charles Bruce, 4 other black families, and a couple of dozen white families hundreds of years ago." You see how they threw in a couple of dozen white families? They had to throw that in. But the white families didn't live under Jim Crow. So we acknowledge and condemn what our city forefathers and some white residents did to Willa and Charles Bruce, 4 other black families, and a couple of dozen white families 100 years ago. Suzanne Hadley, the mayor of Manhattan Beach, said in the email, quote, "But I do not agree that our current city must wear a scarlet R embroidered on our chest for the end of time." Now, see, okay. When you have people like this, and I don't know Suzanne Hadley. She's probably a very nice woman. When you have people like this who don't see, these are some of the same people that say that was a long time ago, it's time to move on. She might not say those exact words, but when you don't even want to issue an apology for what happened to this African American family, because you'll have white people today, and we have white listeners here to the, on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. So they know, they know what I'm saying. You have people who say we shouldn't have to be held accountable, or we shouldn't have to pay for the sins of our forefathers. But at the same time, they benefit from the sins of their forefathers. At the same time, the land that was stolen from African Americans, and then white people take that land. That's what happened in Rosewood, Florida. The Rosewood, Florida massacre, January 1923. Those African Americans were ran out of that city, land taken over by white people, and the city of Rosewood was wiped off the map. So I find it interesting when you have people, meaning white people, who say we don't want to be held accountable for the sins of our forefathers, but you benefit from the sins of your forefathers. They benefit from the land that was stolen from African Americans. They benefit when, if you go back and look at the Farmers Home Administration and the loans that were given out to white farmers during the Great Depression, and many African American farmers couldn't get those loans, and this allowed white farmers to pay the mortgages on their farm, save their farms, mechanize their farms, and better compete against African American farmers. So during the Great Depression, we lost over 200,000 farms. When you look at, we talked about this story dealing with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Tom Vilsack, the returning Agricultural Department Secretary of Agriculture, and he did an interview with the Washington Post. And I'm gonna try to pull this up right quick because all this ties into history. He did an interview with the Washington Post, and he talked about how the $28 billion that Donald Trump gave out in subsidies to basically white farmers, okay, only about 1% of that money, or about 26 million, went to African American farmers. Out of $28 billion, only about 26 million went to African American farmers. Well, there's a history of this type of discrimination. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, and they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. Let's look at this quickly here. We talked about this here on the show. I mentioned this, talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered the day this article came out. There was an interview that the Washington Post did with Tom Vilsack, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says only 0.1%, or a tenth of 1%, of Trump administration's COVID farm relief went to black farmers. Only 1/10 of 1% of Trump administration's COVID farm relief went to black farmers. A tiny fraction, this is from March 25th, 2021, Washington Post. A tiny fraction of the Trump administration's coronavirus relief for American farmers, just 0.1%, 1/10 of 1% of the overall package went to black farmers, according to Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack who was confirmed in February 2021, with strong bipartisan support for a second stint in the role of Secretary of Agriculture. Okay. He said the distribution of coronavirus relief increased those gaps. So he told Washington Post the extent to which the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic exacerbated existing disparities across the American economy. Okay. The Trump administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic exacerbated existing disparities across the American economy. Now, the distribution of coronavirus relief increased those gaps, he said. Of those who identified their race or ethnicity, Black farmers received only 20.8 million. Yeah, 20.8 million, 20.8 million, 20.8 million of the nearly 26 billion in 2 rounds of payments under the coronavirus food assistance program announced by the Trump administration in April 2020. Okay. Of the $26 billion of the subsidies that went to farmers, okay, because of Donald Trump's trade war with China, only 20.8 million, or 1/10 of 1%, went to African American farmers. He said we saw 99% of the money going to white farmers and 1% going to socially disadvantaged farmers. And if you break that down to how much went to Black farmers, it's 0.1%, 1/10 of 1%. He said, look at it another way. The top 10% of farmers in the country receive 60% of the value of the COVID payments, and the bottom 10% receive 0.2%, 0.26%. Okay, so racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. So the people who say we shouldn't have to pay for the sins of our forefathers, they don't have a problem benefiting from the sins of the forefathers and the sins still taking place today. But the solution to this, many of them would say, is that African Americans just need to try harder. See, this is what's so hypocritical about this. They say African Americans just need to try harder. Well, why wouldn't you just level the playing field? See, they don't. I've said this before. A lot of white people. Now, this is not all white people. This applies to, but a lot of white people don't mind having a level playing field. A lot of white people don't mind having a level playing field as long as it's tilted in their direction. This does not apply to all white people. Probably the 40% in this study here from YouGov. But many white people don't mind having a level playing field as long as it's tilted in their direction. But this does not apply to all white people, though. I want to make this clear. All right, I want to go to this clip here from MSNBC. We're going to go to clip 1, Jalen. California may return land taken from Black family 97 years ago. Okay, let's go to this clip.
California is moving to correct a historic injustice when oceanfront property was seized from a Black family almost 100 years ago. Here's coverage of the story from June 27, 1912. The headline there, Colored People's Resort meets with opposition. The photo shows Willa Bruce. She bought the Manhattan Beach property, her family's first plot of land, for $1,225. She and her husband set up a resort that became popular with Black beachgoers. Her family was forced off the land when it was seized under eminent domain, but her descendants have been fighting to get Bruce Beach back ever since. Joining us right now is Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd, historian and designated spokesman for the Bruce family. Chief, thank you so much for being with us on this. A major development came last Friday. What are you hearing from Los Angeles County?
Well, Supervisor Janice Hahn has announced that she would like to see the land given back to the Bruce family. The present building there is the lifeguard training facility, and it is owned by the County of Los Angeles, which is the only part of the beach area that is owned by the county, and it just so happens it's sitting directly on our land that was owned by our matriarch, Willa Bruce and Charles Bruce. So she's proposing legislation along with Senator Steve Bradford and Supervisor Holly Mitchell to remove a clause that says that the county cannot transfer the land without first giving it back to the state. So that legislation is going to be introduced tomorrow, hopefully on a fast track with 2/3 vote of the legislature, so that we can get the land back in our possession.
Could you tell us about Willa Bruce and her husband, Charles?
Very enterprising people, started from very meager beginnings and worked their way up to being some very enterprising business owners there in Manhattan Beach. They started out with a lemonade stand, a little hot dog stand, and then they advanced it to having a dining hall, a dance hall, a bathhouse. They sold water novelties there, and they became very prominent people.
The City Council last Tuesday voted against issuing a public apology to descendants of the Bruce family, fearing potential lawsuits here. According to the Los Angeles Times, officials decided instead to issue a statement of acknowledgement and condemnation. But Chief, would that sit well with the family? Would that be enough?
No, absolutely not. And we're not looking for an apology. We want our property back. We want restitution for the loss of revenue for 96 years that our family would have had, the generational wealth that would have been built up at that time. And we want punitive damages for the city of Manhattan Beach City Council and the police department at that time colluding with the Ku Klux Klan to railroad our people out of there.
So it sounds like, though, this legislation would not address those punitive damages. Does it sound like a lawsuit is imminent?
Yes, it does. I think that Manhattan Beach City Council should start trying to revise their budget. Those roads are not going to be paved, parks are not going to be maintained, and playground equipment is not going to be replaced because the Bruce family deserves to have this rectified. They terrorized our family. Now, there's nothing that can be done to ever replace that. People lived only like 5 to 7 years after this because of the stress, and they left in poverty after being very rich people. So we're waiting for this to happen. I think that we're going to be moving forward with a lawsuit in the very near future.
Hey, pause it right there, Jalen. Pause it right there and back it up about a minute or so. We're about to go to break. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. See, they should have just tried harder. If they just tried harder, everything would have been all right. Okay, that's you people. Y'all should have just tried harder. That's what you should have done. All right. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation Feature Radio on Michael M. Hotel. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. We're on commercial break. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Stand by. How's everybody doing? We've got Ursula. Let's see. We've got Ursula, VC. Calling numbers 313 778 7600. It's a calling number if you have a quick question or comment. Stand by. See if y'all just try out everything. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Okay, we got Becky. Somebody's in Flint, Michigan, Becky? All right. If you all like this type of information, also you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Stand by.
Detroit, 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media.
All right. So they hit me with the disclaimer. Okay. They do that every show. I don't think they're picking on me. They do that every show, but it's just funny that they did it like right after the segment that we just did. All right, so okay, so right before the break, I was talking about this story out of California, out of Manhattan Beach in California, and this deals with a history of racism against African Americans, and this is an example of how our land was stolen from us. Now, our land was stolen multiple times, but specifically, this deals with the case of the Bruces, Willa and Charles Bruce, in Manhattan Beach, California, and they had their land stolen in 1924 when they had beachfront property. They owned a resort, a beach resort, owned by this couple, and the land was stolen through eminent domain, okay, by the city. Okay, so now they could possibly get their land back, and their descendants want restitution as well. They don't just want an apology, they want restitution. There's an article from the New York Times about this. California beach seized in 1924 from a black family could be returned. Nearly a century ago, the city of Manhattan Beach shuttered a resort that belonged to Willa and Charles Bruce. Though the county is trying to give the land back, the city has declined to apologize. Okay, and like I said before, they're afraid of a lawsuit. Okay, and rightfully so, there should be a lawsuit. All right, I want to go back to this clip here from MSNBC, from Weekends with Alex Witt on MSNBC. This is from April 11th, 2021. California may return land taken from black family 97 years ago. And in this clip, Lindsay Reiser is sitting in for Alex Witt, and she's speaking to Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepard, who is the designated spokesman for the Bruce family. Let's go back to this clip, Jalen.
And condemnation, but Chief, would that sit well with the family? Would that be enough?
No, absolutely not. And we're not looking for an apology. We want our property back. We want restitution for the loss of revenue for 96 years that our family would have had, the generational wealth that would have been built up at that time. And we want punitive damages for the city of Manhattan Beach City Council and the police department at that time colluding with the Ku Klux Klan to railroad our people out of there.
So it sounds like, though, this legislation would not address those punitive damages. Does it sound like a lawsuit is imminent?
Yes, it does. I think that Manhattan Beach City Council should start trying to revise their budget, because the roads are not going to be paved, parks are not going to be maintained, and playground equipment is not going to be replaced, because the Bruce family deserves to have this rectified. They terrorized our family. Now, there's nothing that can be done to ever replace that. Our people lived only like 5 to 7 years after this because of the stress, and they left in poverty after being very rich people. So we're waiting for this to happen. I think that we're going to be moving forward with a lawsuit in the very near future.
All right. So that is from MSNBC. Now, I want to go back to the article here from New York Times, and then we'll go to the phone lines. Last month, Janice Hahn, a Los Angeles County supervisor, and let me scroll down to this here. Last month, Janice Hahn, a Los Angeles County supervisor, said she was open to returning the land to the Bruce's descendants. She called the seizure an injustice inflicted upon not just Willa and Charles Bruce, but generations of their descendants who would almost certainly be millionaires if they had been able to keep that beachfront property. See, this is why when I hear certain people, and sometimes you have African American conservatives saying, it's like Burgess Owens, dumbass Burgess Owens, representative from Utah. We talked about him Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Dumbass Burgess Owens, who now this is an African American man, and I use that term loosely with him. Former football player. I don't know if Burgess Owens has CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, but I would not be surprised if he does. Burgess Owens testified back in June 19th, 2019 at the reparations hearing in the House of Representatives. But he testified against reparations for African Americans. He said, we don't need it. He talked about individual success, but he didn't deal with a racism. He didn't deal with a history of racism and laws put in place to maldistribute wealth, power, and resources. He didn't deal with the theft of land. He didn't deal with why the disparities exist today. That's a legacy of slavery. Then in February 2021, the reparations hearing they had, once again, the House of Representatives, he testified there also, along with Herschel Walker and Larry Elder, okay, against reparations for African Americans. I find it interesting they don't want to talk about things like this. I find that very interesting. They want to talk about individual success and try harder. So let me go back to this here. Now, also, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. We definitely need your support. We're here 6 days a week. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. If you do it through YouTube takes 1/3 of the payment, just so you know. If you do it through Cash App or PayPal, we keep a lot more of that, okay? Especially Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App. When you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $, the AHN Show, SHOW, and it'll say Michael, and then show my picture there, okay? So you know it's me. All right. Let me go. I want to go back to this article here, then we'll go to the phone lines. So Janice Hahn said, quote, an injustice inflicted upon not just Willa and Charles Bruce, but generations of their descendants who would almost certainly be millionaires if they had been able to keep that beachfront property, end quote. She didn't say they would be millionaires if they just tried harder. Now, but there was a hiccup. Under California law, the transfer would violate restrictions imposed by the state when it transferred the land to the county. Stephen Bradford, a Democratic state senator, announced he was introducing a bill that would allow the transfer to happen. He said, quote, this is an example of what reparations could look like in California. This is an example of what reparations could look like in California and across the nation. Now, Manhattan Beach has been grappling with the history of the Bruce's resort for years. Bob Brigham, a longtime high school teacher in Manhattan Beach, who died in 2019, compiled research about the resort for a thesis in 1956. A park near the lifeguard training center was renamed Bruce's Beach in 2007. A park near the lifeguard training center was renamed Bruce's Beach in 2007. Okay. Now, in October of 2020, city officials convened a task force to consider recommendations to right historical wrongs. In October 2020, city officials convened a task force to consider recommendations to right historical wrongs. The undertaking prompted emotional discussions and personality clashes over history, reparations, and racism in the past and in the present. Now, one of the problems with history is that so many people don't know it. A lot of them are Republicans. This is why I say America needs a massive history lesson. If you go back and watch, okay, so I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered Friday, April 16th. If you go back and watch the episode from Friday, April 15th, they talked about the House Judiciary Committee vote on HR 40 that took place Wednesday evening, April 14th. We talked about that here on the show. It was Wednesday night. We talked about that here on the show because when the news broke that the House Judiciary Committee voted to approve HR 40 and to vote it out of committee so it can go to the full House floor for a vote so the full House of Representatives can vote on it. We talked about that here on the show when the news broke Wednesday, April 14th. So go back and watch the April 14th, 2021 show, and we go deep into that. Now, Dr. Ray Winbush of Cobra, and he was a friend of mine, I've interviewed him on the show before. Dr. Ray Winbush was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Thursday to talk about the vote. And one of the things he said was he couldn't believe how ignorant some of the Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee were about history. Go back and watch that. He said he could not believe how ignorant some of them were about history. Well, what people have to understand is a lot of the people that voted these ignorant Republicans into office, a lot of those people are just as ignorant as them or worse. This is why America has to have a massive history lesson, because a lot of the issues and the conflicts we're dealing with are because of a lack of understanding of history and the lies that have been told in schools, the lies that have been propagated. So if we look at this here, in October, city officials convened a task force to consider recommendations to right historical wrongs. The undertaking prompted emotional discussions and personality clashes over history, reparations, or racism in the past and in the present. All you have to do is look at the people who are flying Confederate battle flags of Northern Virginia and call it the Confederate flag. And this was the flag of traitors, and they think that's the Confederate flag, but there were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. That flag that was on the General Lee car on the Dukes of Hazzard, that wasn't the Confederate flag. That never flew over the Confederate States of America. That was not their official flag. That was the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. Now, some residents felt a subtle shift in the community. Allison Hales, age 40, said, "I feel like the energy has changed." Allison Hales is age 40 and a Manhattan Beach resident who was a member of the task force. She said, "There's such a divide now. There's such a divide now." Now, by the time the task force's recommended apology appeared on the city council's agenda last month of March 2021, it had become a lightning rod. Some residents argued that an apology would cast unfair blame on the current residents. Why would you think if city officials apologized for what happened in 1924, that would somehow cast unfair blame on the residents today? See, See, this is what happens when people are stuck on stupid. Why would you think that apologizing for what happened in 1924 somehow casts unfair blame on current residents today, unless maybe you have feelings that make you feel guilty, unless maybe you've done things that make you feel guilty? Now, others were aghast that Manhattan Beach would refuse to apologize for having pushed out African Americans. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to line one. Let's go to Dave from West Virginia. Dave from Virginia. Dave, thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, Mike, good to hear from you, man. I saw you on Roland. You was doing pretty good, man.
Oh, thanks.
You represent real well, buddy.
Oh, thanks.
I want to thank you for that. How's everything else going?
Oh, it's busy, man. It's busy. Go ahead with your question or comment, because I got another call in. I got more topics to get to. You have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we have everything clear in terms of reparations, because I think there's some misrepresentations going on. It's not fully understood. As you say, it's not fully understood. Number one, the reparations bill, I heard it passed the Congressional Committee this week, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, House Judiciary Committee.
I want to make it clear that. So what?
It was the House Judiciary Committee that voted on HR 40 to vote it out of committee. So then the next step is for the full House of Representatives to vote on. Yeah.
Right. But I want to make sure that people understand a couple of things. Number one, the claim for reparations from blacks is not just for slavery.
Right.
Because they didn't stop screwing us over after slavery. It continued all the way up. You could say it continued all the way up to this day, but I would say at least up to the 60s.
It's a legacy. It's a legacy of slavery. It's legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, etc., and the laws and policies that were put in place. That brings us right up to today.
Discriminatory redlining,
right,
to fraudulent greenlining, two sides of the same coin, right?
Right.
So also, too, the second thing is we got to make sure that people don't present something to us that may be beneficial, but it's still not reparation. I'll give you an example. The program in Evanston, that might be a beneficial program. I think it is, but it's not reparations. It's really a housing program. Did you
hear the interview? Did you hear the interview I did with Robin Ruth Simmons?
Yeah, I heard
but let's be clear. Reparations means repairing the damage. Reparations is not specific to slavery. This is what people misunderstand.
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
In fact, I'm getting to that.
But
first of all, that Evanston program got nothing to do with slavery.
Well, slavery didn't exist in Evanston. Slavery didn't exist in Evanston, Illinois.
It was between 1919 and 1969, right? So it got nothing to do with slavery.
But nobody said it did. Nobody said it had anything to do with slavery. Nobody. Dave, slow down. No one said it had anything to do with slavery. This is the miscommunication. That's why I spent an hour interviewing her.
That's what I'm trying to clear up. I'm trying to make sure that people understand that it has nothing to do with slavery.
Because slavery didn't exist in Evanston, Illinois. Yeah. Well, who?
Slavery for reparations. It's beneficial.
Okay.
But it's not reparation. That's my point.
Reparations. Well, hold on. Slow down, Dave. Because I've dealt with this extensively here on this show. Reparations and slavery are not synonymous. Reparations means repairing the damage of a wrong that was done. Reparations were paid to the descendants. Exactly. Reparations were paid to those who survived the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. Reparations were paid to the survivors of the state-sponsored eugenics program in North Carolina that existed from 1929 to the end of the 1979-80. Reparations is not synonymous with slavery. It means repairing the damage. In Evanston, and people. That's what I'm trying to. But I think people make the leap. They make that leap from reparations to slavery, and I'm trying to say that the Evanston program is not reparations for slavery. It's simply
program. It's a housing program.
Because
okay?
because in Evanston, redlining was damaging African Americans, but Evanston was founded after slavery ended in Illinois. Okay, we got to go to break. Stand by. All right, everybody, you listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. All right, we got Anthony, Janie, Ian, Ursula, Mike, Jerome, all right, everybody stand by. I'm posting the link to the interview that I did with 5th Ward Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons in Evanston, Illinois, because we separate fact from fiction. A lot of this BS floating around. All right, stand by. We're back from break in 2 minutes.
Nine ten, the Superstation, the oldest radio station in town since 1922.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. If you like this type of information, also, once again, you support the African History Network, $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That helps us keep doing the research and stay on the air, keep broadcasting 6 days a week. I interviewed 5th Ward Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons, April 1st, 2021. We posted the link here on the thread of the broadcast to that interview. It's on Facebook and YouTube. So you can go back and watch that entire interview, and that dealt with the reparations program in Evanston, Illinois, that dealt with a history of redlining in Evanston, because Evanston was founded in the 1840s after slavery was abolished in the state of Illinois. Okay, Evanston was founded after slavery was abolished, so they don't have a history of slavery in Evanston, but they do have a history of redlining. That proposal that passed City Council in Evanston is based upon a 77-page study that was conducted in the year 2020 that dealt with a history of redlining in Evanston, Illinois. So we talked about the study also in that interview as well. Let's go back quickly to the phone lines and get the last comment from Dave. Then we're going to go to Glenn on line 2. Dave, go ahead with your final comment.
Yeah, my last comment was that I just wanted to make it clear that just like Chief Yellowfeather said about his upcoming lawsuit, is not just about the theft of the land; it's about punitive damages for the loss of generational wealth to his family. And I think you were making that same point that when there is a claim made by African Americans who experienced slavery, that claim will have to include everything, including slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, greenlining, sundown towns, lynchings, massacres, the whole 9 yards.
It's dealing with a legacy, yeah. It's done with a legacy of slavery and what happened. Yeah. Yeah. Repairing the damage. Okay. All right. Keep listening. Thanks, Dave. Keep listening. All right. Let's go quickly to Glenn, line 2. Glenn, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from, Glenn. Thanks for holding.
Thank you for letting me get on the air. I just wondered if when the county took the land for eminent domain, did it get at the fair price, and was it the only piece of property, or was it a series of properties that they purchased at the same time?
Was there a series of properties that were purchased at? They got $14,500 in 1924.
Was that market value?
I'm not sure if it was market value at the time. Take a look at the article.
That would be very important, wouldn't it?
Take a look at the article.
Important?
Well, it wasn't important to them. They didn't want to give up their land. They didn't want to give up their land. Whatever the market value was.
That's what the government does.
Well, whatever the market value was. Slow down. Whatever the government did, the land was worth a lot more, and it generated a lot more money than $14,500. One, two, the county said, Glenn, slow down. The county said they needed the land. No, you keep talking. Listen, the county said that they need. Okay, hang up on this dumbass. See, this is what happens when you don't want to read. This is what happens when you don't want to read. The county said that at the time the land was seized, the city claimed to need it for a public park, but then left it undeveloped for 3 decades. He wants to talk about market value. He doesn't want to deal with the fact why they steal these people's land and leave it vacant for 3 decades when you said you needed it for a public park. But he probably says black people just need to try harder also. All right. So let's scroll back down. I want to go back to this here. I'm going to continue with this. So by the time the task force's recommended apology appeared on the city council's agenda last month, it had become a lightning rod. Some residents argued that an apology would cast unfair blame on current residents. Others were aghast that Manhattan Beach would refuse to apologize for having pushed out African Americans. Now, in March, an ad urging the city to reject the apology appeared in the Beach Reporter, which is a local newspaper. Quote, "We have been falsely accused of being a racist city," end quote, said the ad. "We have been falsely accused of being a racist city," the ad said, which was posted anonymously and said it had been paid for by quote unquote concerned citizens who were a network of many. Now, Allison Hales, who said she found the ad disturbing, worked to create another ad in favor of an apology. It appeared in the same newspaper and was signed by hundreds of residents. She said, quote, "It was a proud moment to see the community come together and allow their names to be printed." It was a proud moment to see the community come together and allow their names to be printed. Now, on April 6th, in a virtual meeting that went on for more than 5 hours, the city council voted 4-1 to adopt a statement of acknowledgement and condemnation, but offered no apology. They voted to adopt a statement of acknowledgement and condemnation, but offered no apology. Joe Franklin, the city council member who wrote the acknowledgement, said at the meeting that if the quote city were to issue an apology today for what took place 100 years ago, it would be ascribing the offending events to a vast majority of our residents living here now. How that doesn't even make sense. Nobody would believe that the residents that live there today lived there 100 years ago. But the harm, the theft of land, even though they would pay $14,500, the land was worth a lot more than that because of the money that it generated. And the Bruces didn't want to sell the land. So the land and the harm that was done to the family, we know that wasn't by the people who live there today. But when you have something like this, see, there's a guilt that some white people have. There's a guilt, and they don't want to apologize for what their forefathers did, because some of them understand what they have today is based upon what their forefathers did. So this is why many of them don't want to issue an apology, because then all you got to do is just follow from 1924 up to today and deal with the history and laws and policies put in place. And a lot of them don't want to have that conversation because they don't like where that conversation is going to end up. Because then you're going to have to deal with white supremacy and racism. See, then you're going to have to deal with white supremacy and racism being a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. And racism occurring when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, healthcare, jobs, money, etc., and they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. So many now this doesn't apply to all white people. Some white people will have this conversation, don't have a problem with that. But you have a lot that don't want to have that conversation because they don't like where it's going to end up. And it's going to end up dealing with white supremacy and racism and a history of a maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources in this country. So their solution is, oh, you should have just tried harder. That's their advice. Some of them. This is, oh, you should have just tried harder. All right. Let me go back to the article here. So Joe Franklin and Allison Hadley, Joe Franklin and Suzanne Hadley is the mayor, condemned the racism against the Bruces, but said an apology could increase the risk of litigation against the city. Quote, our legal system includes a statute of limitations for a reason, Mayor Suzanne Hadley said. Quote, 100 years later, the best course of action is to learn from our history, teach ourselves and our children so that it's never repeated, and move forward vowing to do better, end quote. Teach ourselves and our children so that it never happens, so it's never repeated. That's true. That's good. And move forward vowing to do better. That's good. But what about the damage that was done? How do you repair the damage that was done there by the government, by the local government? Now, Mr. Bruce and Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd, and we heard Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd in the piece from MSNBC, a relative of the Bruce family who lives in Los Angeles and is chief of the Pocasset Wampanoag tribe of the Pokanoket Nation, condemned the decision not to apologize and called for the city to pay restitution. Quote, they keep falling over themselves trying to show they're not racist, and everything they do shows more racism. Whoop, there it is. Tag team back again. Whoop, there it is. They keep falling over themselves trying to show they're not racist, and everything they do shows more racism, said Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd. He is of African descent, by the way, also, which ties into a history of African Americans and Native Americans, an intermixing of African Americans and Native Americans, and African people also, being the original Americans, and different groups of Africans who were here when European settlers get here. Some of those groups get reclassified as Native Americans or Indians or what have you. So it's a complicated history. Let me go back to this. So Chief Yellowfeather, a relative of the Bruce family, said they keep falling over themselves trying to show they're not racist, and everything they do shows more racism. Now, both men said the county and the state legislature appeared to be taking steps in the right direction. Mr. Bruce added that he hoped the land transfer could set a precedent for Black families who have been dispossessed across the nation. Okay, absolutely. Allison Rose Jefferson, a historian based in Los Angeles, who wrote about the Bruces and other families in her book, name of the book is Living the California Dream, African American Leisure Sites During the Jim Crow Era. She said, there is some good coming from people understanding this history. There is some good coming from people understanding this history, but added that the city was, quote, missing an opportunity to be a part of righting the wrongs that have been done to Black people. Okay, check out the rest of this article here. This is from New York Times. It's a good piece written by J.C. Fortin. California beach seized in 1924 from a Black family could be returned. This is from April 18th, 2021 from the New York Times. CNN has an article also. A Black family's beach property in California was taken. It's worth millions. That's by Alexandra Meeks from April 12th, 2021 also. Okay, we're going to go to, what's this? We're going to go to clip, we're going to go to clip 2, Jalen, dealing with the, we're going to go to clip 2 dealing with ancient Egypt here in just a second, the discovery in Egypt. So I saw this story came out April 9th. I posted an article from face-to-faceafrica.com about this. And there's a piece also on the Today Show on NBC, and NBC News has an article. All the news outlets cover this story. In September 2020, there was a discovery made. There was a lost city of Egypt that was uncovered. And they revealed this on April 9th. Okay. They revealed this on April 9th. A 3,400-year-old city in ancient Egypt has been discovered. Okay. And this is said to be the most significant discovery since in Egypt since King Tut's tomb. This is called the Lost Golden City. A lost golden city in Egypt dating back 3,400 years has been revealed. And King Tut's tomb was discovered in 1922. Now, the city buried under sands near the modern day city of Luxor for 3 millennia was uncovered in September 2020 by a team led by Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass, and was revealed to the world Thursday. That was Thursday, April 8th, 2021. Zahi Hawass was giving a tour to NBC News, and he said, "This is amazing because actually we know a lot about tombs and afterlife. This is amazing because actually we know a lot about tombs and afterlife." He said, "But now we discover a large city to tell us for the first time about the life of the people during the Golden Age." He said, "Each piece of sand can tell us the lives of the people and how the people lived at the time, how the people lived in the time of the Golden Age when Egypt ruled the world, or this would be ancient Kemet." Okay, I want to go to the this piece here. This is an interview with Zahi Hawass in Egypt about this lost city that was discovered. Let's go to this clip, Jalen.
Ancient Egyptian road is a rarity, a wonder, and now for the first time ever, a lost city rising from the sand. buried for millennia, untouched, almost intact.
We discovered a large city to tell us about the life of the people.
Uncovered by Egypt's most famous archaeologist, Dr. Zaki Hawass. It's the largest industrial city ever found in Egypt, believed to be more than 3,400 years old, and he gave us the exclusive tour.
It was just understand.
The amazing thing now is what we found inside the city.
He says it's the second most important discovery ever after King Tut's tomb in 1922.
All this zigzag architecture elements everywhere, connected with the houses. You can see in the two sides of the big street that divide the city to 3 districts, and each district has an entrance.
It's called Dazzling Aten after the single sun god as Egypt moved to monotheism, and it will change history books. It's the key to understanding the movement of Egypt's most famous pharaohs.
Each piece of sand can tell us the life of the people, how the people lived in that time when Egypt ruled the world. Okay.
The first step, dating the city. The zigzag walls used during the end of the 18th dynasty, and inscriptions on vessels used to cure meat confirmed that.
Look at this. Surprise.
Surprise. There's so much amazing pottery.
The inscriptions in hieroglyphic here say year 37.
History says the city was abandoned, but was the city then repopulated when the famous King Tut returned?
Listen.
Just an ancient artifact, 3,000 years old.
It can be for drinking.
There has never been this much pottery discovered at one site. The artifacts museum ready, now being restored at the other end of the city. Vessels of all sizes, a treasure trove of semi-precious stones, scarabs, beads, and rings.
Oh, it fits on the pancake. Good. Oh, there we go. Is this a real egg?
Yes. 3,000 years old.
Dr. Hawass has another high-profile excavation on the go. Ramses II in the Valley of the Kings.
We are in front of the tomb of Ramses II, the king of the kings.
We descended into the tomb less gracefully than the pharaohs deserved, the first TV crew ever to film inside. And they're looking for a mystery tunnel connecting Ramses II to his son.
You never know what the sand of Egypt may hide of secrets.
Oh, that was fascinating, Molly. We get why you were grinning ear to ear. Okay, so we're seeing a whole bunch of that city, but is that just a fraction of what they expect to find?
Oh, Hoda, I'm told that this is minuscule, and look how incredible this is. So Dr. Hawass says this city is so expansive. Thousands of people lived here servicing the palaces and temples. They've been digging here since September, and this is how much they have found. Now, going forward, the dig will be supported by Discovery Plus. So they're hoping for so many more clues, so much more city, more tombs, and hopefully, Hoda, some details about possibly King Tut living right here. Guys,
I think you two should take it on the road. You guys are real good together. That worked great. Molly, thank you.
that is exciting.
Your people.
Okay. That was from the Today Show, NBC News. It's from April 9th, 2021. Lost Golden City of Luxor discovered by archaeologists in Egypt. If we look at this article quickly here from face-to-faceafrica.com, I posted this article when it came out on April 9th, 2021. We posted this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Name of this article, A Look at the 3,000-Year-Old Lost Golden City that has just been discovered in Egypt. Okay. And you see a picture, they have a picture here of the remains that were found. The city dates to the reign of Amenhotep III, one of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs, okay, or Nasubitis. Because Nasubiti would be the correct term. And so check out that article. I want to go back to the one here from NBC News here for just a second. flip back over to that. And you'll hear more about this as well. Now, the discoveries take place. You'll read about discoveries every other week, and especially in East Africa, especially in the Nile Valley region, in Egypt, in that area. You're going to read about discoveries taking place every other week. Dr. Zahi Hawass said that this is amazing because actually we know a lot about tombs and the afterlife. Now, he said each piece of sand can tell us the lives of the people, how the people lived at the time, how the people lived in the time of the golden age when Egypt ruled the world. He said we spend a lot of time talking about mummies and talking about how they died, the ritual of their deaths, and this is the ritual of their lives. Now, this city is the largest uncovered from ancient Egypt and is only partly excavated. Artifacts including rings, scarabs, the scarab beetle, scarabs, and colored pottery confirmed the dating of the reign of Amenhotep III, who ruled Egypt from ancient Kemet, who ruled ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet from 1391 to 1353 BC. Okay, so BC dates count down, AD dates count up. All right. So, and Amenhotep III, his wife was Queen T or Queen Tai, and his son was Amenhotep IV, who changed his name to Akhenaten. All right. Akhenaten was married to Nefertiti, Queen Nefertiti. Now, Zahi Hawass' team was searching for King Tutankhamun's mortuary temple and was surprised to instead find a series of mud walls rising out of the sand, some about 10 feet tall and built in a zigzag design characteristic of that period. Other archaeologists have previously searched for and failed to find the city. Now, with its storage houses, grinding stones, ovens, and areas for meat production and everyday tools still intact, the site gives a rare glimpse into a working Egyptian city. He said the discovery of this lost city is the second most important archaeological discovery since the tomb of King Tut, said Betsy Bryan. Betsy Bryan, a professor of Egyptology at Johns Hopkins University, said in the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities news release. Okay, so check out the rest of this article here from NBC News. Inside Egypt's 3,000 years old lost golden city. And also look at the article from face-to-faceafrica.com as well. You're going to hear more about this. This ties into some deep history. Once again, here is a example of the remains that were found of the zigzag design that they talked about. All right. I want to go quickly to this next story here. This next story comes out of Texas. And it deals with a auction. It was like a group chat auction that took place dealing with African-American students and students of color. We talked about this also on Roland Martin Unfiltered when I was on Friday, April 16th. But it's a disturbing story. Texas high schoolers disciplined for slave trading game that auctioned off classmates based on race. Okay. And there was an article from the Washington Post that I saw about this as well. We're going to go to, let's see, we're going to go to clip. We're going to go to clip 3 in just a second, Jalen, dealing with this situation here in Texas. But this also ties into why it's so important to teach history properly in schools. And I don't know what type of history that's being taught at this school here. But a North Texas school district, this is the Aledo Independent School District in Texas. A North Texas school district is condemning the acts of students who reportedly assigned prices to students of color in a slave trade auction Snapchat group message. Okay. This is a crazy, crazy story. Let's go to clip 3, Jalen.
Parents and civil rights leaders in Parker County are demanding a tougher response from the Aledo School District after finding out some students staged an online slave auction of minority students. Fox 4's Jan Anglin joins us now with details. Jan.
Well, some community leaders are getting involved in this Aledo ISD matter they consider disturbing and cause for concern, and that includes the local NAACP.
The Aledo ISD statement issued on Monday announcing disciplinary action at its 9th grade campus in wake of racist social media posts was not the district's first time to address the matter. The incident itself was a mock slave trade. Screenshots of the online post Fox 4 has chosen not to show. They include students bidding for their Black classmates in what's referred to as an expletive auction. Fox 4 obtained the district's initial response to the student group posting. What some parents complained was a softball approach. It was a school news item dated the week of April 5th. Principal Carolyn Ainsley writes, "We had an incident of cyberbullying and harassment." It also focused on the difference between a bystander and upstander on social media, stating, "A bystander allows things like bullying to happen without speaking up, but an upstander has the character to speak up to the bully and or tell a teacher or administrator." On Monday, the district spoke of the incident in more specific terms, noting its racially offensive nature, and said disciplinary action was taken, though not detailing what type of punishment or how many students were disciplined.
The parents, our organization, other concerned citizens have to stand up and shine a light on the situation and say, fix it. Fix the problem.
Eddie Burnett is president of the Parker County branch of NAACP. He has a message for Aledo ISD administrators and will request to speak during public comment at the district's next regular board meeting on Monday.
You have to be unambiguous about what your policies are, what the rules are, what the consequences are, and what the reason is for putting so much emphasis on it. That, you can't be trying to excuse the behavior. At the same time, you address the problem. Because if you do, you cancel out anything you try to do.
A civil rights attorney, Lee Merritt, confirms for Fox 4 he will represent families whose students were targeted in these social media posts. He says that he spent today speaking with families and taking their statements.
Okay, so that is from Fox 4 affiliate there in Texas area. That's from April 13th, 2021. Parents, civil rights leaders demand tougher response to Aledo student slave auction. So there was an article from the USA Today that talked about this, and students of color auction and slave trade group message by Texas high schoolers. And this took place at the Daniel 9th grade campus. It was students from the Daniel 9th grade campus who, and that's part of the Aledo Independent School District, okay? Parker County NAACP President Eddie Burnett at the time of this article had not spoken to the students who were bullied in the group message, but said he can imagine the pain and embarrassment from suffering similar things in an era when social media was not around. He said it's something that breaks you down mentally and emotionally. Parker County NAACP President Eddie Burnett said. He said it makes you wonder if something is really wrong with you. Okay, we're going to go to clip clip 4 from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Jalen, we're going to squeeze that in. So we talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered, April 16th, and then the conversation came to me. Here's what I said. Let's go to this clip, Jalen.
Checked our butts, but on the back end of that, you have serious steps that could be taken to sue you. Then you take the action necessary. Why wait till things come public for you to do the right thing? We continue to see this over and over and over and over again with issues involving our people, where when it's quiet, no one wants to do the right thing. But when it gets out in the open, you're going to get sued. You're going to be put in a situation where you're going to face some sort of embarrassment. You go from a couple of lines to a couple of books of explaining the right thing to do. It's disgusting. It needs to change. In a state like Texas specifically, it needs to be gone.
Bottom line is, again, somebody got lit up and they were like, we better go ahead and put out a new statement. So, yeah, smart move. All right, folks, let's go to Pennsylvania. But the Department of Education has introduced a plan that...
All right.
Well, no, Mike, you don't comment on everything.
Well, Parker...
Go ahead.
Parker County NAACP President Eddie Burnett spoke out on this, so maybe that was the impetus right there. But very quickly, Roland. One, I don't know how many of these of the white students' parents or relatives were at the insurrection January 6th at the U.S. Capitol building. I'm not sure, but if we find out the actual numbers, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, 2018, 2019, there were 413 graduates from this. From the Daniel 9th grade campus, 413 graduates, 7 were African American, 346 were white, and 45 were Hispanic. I encourage everybody to look at the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History American Slavery. Teaching Hard History American Slavery. I use it, and it can be used in schools, and it documents, one, how the history of slavery is incorrectly taught in schools all across the country.
All right, pause it right there. Pause it right there. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotel, we're going to keep broadcasting. We're out of time here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week. We'll talk to you Monday night. Okay. All right, peace. All right, stand by. Hold on, man. That clip wasn't queued up where it was supposed to be queued up at. We're going to continue that clip. That's from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay. Stand by, everybody. All right, let's go to this.
Well, Parker.
Go ahead.
Parker County NAACP President Eddie Burnett spoke out on this, so maybe that was the impetus right there. But very quickly, Roland. One, I don't know how many of these of the white students' parents were or relatives were at the insurrection January 6th at the U.S. Capitol building. I'm not sure. But if we find out the actual numbers, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, 2018, 2019, there were 413 graduates from this from the Daniel 9th grade campus. 413 graduates, 7 were African American, 346 were white, and 45 were Hispanic.
I encourage everybody to look at the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History American Slavery. Teaching Hard History American Slavery. I use it, and it can be used in schools, and it documents, one, how the history of slavery is incorrectly taught in schools all across the country. Two, it makes very good recommendations on how to more correctly teach that history, okay? Because I can only imagine what they teach about history at this school here and what they teach about slavery when only 7 students in the graduating class were African American. So, yeah, brother, this is a real problem, and you're dealing with Texas also. Okay. All right. So, check out this story here. Check out this story here from USA Today, as well as from NBC News. You can just Google this topic. It's really crazy, and I want to see, okay, exactly how are they going to address this issue and make sure it doesn't happen again. All right, you're dealing with at this 9th grade campus, 2018, 2019, out of 413 graduates, only 7 were African American. Now, local activist Tony Crawford told the Star Telegram, which is a Dallas, Texas area newspaper. He told the Star Telegram, "Can you imagine what it's like for somebody to put a price on your head? Can you imagine what it's like for somebody to put a price on your head?" Local activist Tony Crawford told the Star Telegram, quote, "I cannot imagine the embarrassment and hurt that people you might be friends with are having that conversation," end quote. Now, the district learned of the incident over 2 weeks ago and launched an investigation that included law enforcement. The district spoke with the students involved and their parents and, quote, assigned disciplinary consequences in accordance with our policy and the student code of conduct. They assigned disciplinary consequences in accordance with our policy and the student code of conduct. Now, a representative for Aledo Independent School District, ISD, said the district could not release details of the consequences because of student protections. According to the school's student handbook, a student found in violation of the bullying policy will face disciplinary action and could be transferred to a different classroom on campus. Okay. Well, I mean, can't they tell what action was taken? Just don't release the names of the students. Quote, "We ask that our parents and community continue to have important conversations with their children at home about racism and other forms of harassment as we all work together as a community to support our Bearcats." Okay, that must be the mascot. But what happens when the white supremacy and racism is coming from the home? What happens when you're dealing with parents who are ignorant of history? Okay, so check out this article here from USA Today. Students of color auctioned in slave trade group message by Texas high schoolers. This is from April 15th, 2021. Then there was also one from April 13th from NBC News that I saw as well on this topic. Texas high school is disciplined for slave trading gang that auctioned off classmates based on race. And one of the things they said in here was that a student posted, quote, $1 for Chris, and would be better if his hair wasn't so bad. So apparently, I think Chris is an African-American student. They were going to bid $1 for Chris. They said it'd be more if his hair wasn't so bad. So you have a real problem here. It's not just dealing with racism, it's dealing with phenotype, but it's also dealing with hair texture and how African Americans wear their hair, it appears, which then ties into a whole nother history. It ties a history of racism and things like this, but it deals with a history of a European stereotype of beauty and what's accepted and what's professional and things like this. This is why various cities and various states have these crown acts that make it illegal to discriminate against people, especially African Americans, because of their hairstyles that they wear. Let's look at this article here quickly from NBC News. So the district stated Monday, and this would be Monday, April 12th. The district said in a statement Monday that it discovered that students from the Daniel 9th grade campus have been engaged in racial harassment and cyberbullying more than 2 weeks ago, and launched an immediate and thorough investigation that involved law enforcement. All right. So I want to see how all this turns out. Okay. What disciplinary action did you actually take? And you don't have to tell us the names of the people or the students that were punished. Just tell us what happened to them. All right. So we have that story also. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Our current promotion is buy 1 month, get 1 month free, and you'll get 200 ads over the course of 30 days. We rebroadcast our shows throughout the day, as many of you see. We rebroadcast our shows throughout the day. And your 30-second and 60-second video commercial will air in the rebroadcast of our various shows. So you'll get 200 commercials over the course of 30 days. Okay. Email us at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com, ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. If you have your own commercial, that's fine. 30 seconds to 60 seconds. If not, you can send us a script. We'll record a commercial for you and run it. Time the script before you send it. People send me scripts that are 2.5 minutes. Okay, it has to be between about 30 seconds to 60 seconds. If it's 61, 62 seconds, that's fine. Okay, 190 seconds, no. Okay, all right. So, but email us at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. Okay. Also, the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We have a new section of the class starting up Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So a lot of people said that they couldn't do it on Tuesdays because I have a Tuesday class that's ending. A lot of people said they couldn't do it on Tuesdays and want to know when I'm going to do it again. So we have a section starting up Saturday, April 24th, 2021. And this is a 9-week, 18-hour online course. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All right. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. All the sessions are done live. You can watch from around the world. You can see me. I can't see you. So you don't have to worry about, doing your hair or whatever. You don't have to be in your pajamas, whatever. You can ask questions during the class. There's a live text chat. And then all the sessions are recorded also. So you can go back, they're archived. So you can go back and watch them over and over again. Even after the class, even after the course is ended, you can go back and you still have access. You can go back and watch the class. So It's regularly $130. It's on sale $80. We posted the link here. It's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So at our website, you scroll down, and we're going to I'll show this to you here. So if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the home page, you'll see the information for the radio show. And let's see here. Let's flip over. So you scroll down the page and you'll see the information, new information for the new class starting up. So we have the information here for the radio show. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You click right here to listen to audio podcasts of the shows. Click here to read articles I've written. This is our show from March 15th, 2021, where I dealt with Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B performing WAP at the Grammys and how disaster that was. We do a negative corporate controlled hip hop. So here, class starts April 24th. It's a 9-week online course. We have the new flyer here as well. Click right here to register here. It takes you to the new class. It's an 18-hour, 9-week online course. And just click right here to enroll. And as soon as you enroll, you can start watching bonus content that's there, and that'll enroll you into the new class. All right. Okay. Let's go quickly to this last article here. March was the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965. 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And we know also March was the 56th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. All right. April 12th was the anniversary of Dr. King being arrested in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay. And then a few days after that, he's going to write the letter from a Birmingham jail. There was a clip from, let's see here. There was an article from Equal Justice Initiative, EJI.org, dealing with April 12, 1963. Bull Connor orders Dr. King and dozens of civil rights marchers violently arrested in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, this is from EJI.org, the Equal Justice Initiative. And there was a piece from Southern Living that I saw. I think it was in the month of March, and I did not get a chance to talk about this story here. But this deals with what the restaurants that serve the civil rights activists. Okay. And it's a really good history that's not talked about a lot. Black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. But quickly here, if we look at this from EJI.org, Bull Connor orders Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and dozens more civil rights marchers violently arrested. This took place April 12th, 1963. Okay, April 12th, 1963. And here's a picture of Dr. King and Hosea Williams. Now, April 12th, 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and at least 55 others, almost all whom were African American, were jailed for parading without a permit. Jailed for parading without a permit during a march against segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. A crowd of over 1,000 activists joined Dr. King, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, and Reverend Ralph Abernathy on a nonviolent march toward the downtown area, as hundreds more people lined the streets to support them. Now, the peaceful marchers embarking from 6th Avenue Zion Hill Church in a predominantly African American neighborhood and headed for City Hall, met a first police barricade and continued on in a different direction. When the marchers neared a second police barricade, Commissioner Eugene Bull Connor gave the officers clear orders. Stop them, don't let them go any farther. Stop them, don't let them go any further. Now, Bull Connor was a notorious segregationist with close ties to the Ku Klux Klan. At his command, several motorcycle patrolmen surrounded the crowd of peaceful protesters and began violent mass arrests. Police officers arrested Dr. King, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and then continued grabbing and hitting them. There was Reverend Ralph Abernathy behind Dr. King there in the picture. There's Reverend Ralph Abernathy. I was thinking of Hosea Williams because Hosea Williams was at Bloody Sunday, March 7, 1965. Dr. King was not at Bloody Sunday, but Hosea Williams was. But that was Reverend Ralph Abernathy in that picture. At least 54 more people were arrested that day, including Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. Now, the arrested marchers were charged with violating an injunction barring racial protests in the city of Birmingham, Alabama. City officials had obtained the injunction from a circuit judge earlier that same week after arguing that civil rights protests attracted violence. Even though the protests were always explicitly nonviolent and the violence that did occur was regularly wielded by police targeting the demonstrating activists. Throughout 1963 Birmingham campaign, throughout activists' 1963 Birmingham campaign to challenge racial segregation, the entire world witnessed the police brutal treatment of nonviolent activists through newspaper photographs and televised footage depicting demonstrators being bitten by dogs, beaten by police officers, and slammed into walls by fire hoses. Dr. King and others were jailed in the Birmingham jail for several days after their arrest, while allies worked to raise money for bail. During this time, Dr. King drafted his famous letter from a Birmingham jail in response to a joint letter that several white ministers had published in the local press, decrying the march and civil rights activist methods. Dr. King wrote, "For years, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait, W-A-I-T, this wait has almost always meant never." Dr. King wrote in the letter from a Birmingham jail, "We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. Justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights, and we will still creep at horse and buggy pace toward gaining a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. You deplored the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. The Jim Crow laws, a legacy of slavery, a system of racism, and the system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race." He said, "I am sure that none of you would want to, I am sure that none of you would want to rest content with the superficial kind of social analysis that deals merely with effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Negro community with no alternative. He said it is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Negro with no alternative. Now, oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever, Dr. King said. The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself, and that is what has happened to the American Negro. Something within has reminded him of his birthright of freedom, and something without has reminded him that it can be gained. Consciously or unconsciously, he has been caught up by the zeitgeist, and with his black brothers of Africa and his brown and yellow brothers of Asia, South America, and the Caribbean, the United States Negro is moving with a sense of great urgency toward the promised land of racial justice. If one recognizes this vital urge that has been engulfed, if one recognizes this vital urge that has engulfed the Negro community, one should readily understand why public demonstrations are taking place. Now, Dr. King was released on bond April 20th, 1963, but continued his work as a civil rights leader until he was assassinated 5 years later. Most white Americans, especially in the South, supported segregation and opposed the civil rights activism that Dr. King and many others waged against it. As civil rights advocates began to win important judicial and legislative victories, white Americans implemented a strategy of massive resistance, quote unquote, massive resistance, deploying a range of tactics and weapons to discourage activism and slow the tide of progress. Some of these methods, such as criminalizing, arresting, and imprisoning peaceful protesters, foreshadowed the modern mass incarceration era. So read the rest of this from the EJI.org, Equal Justice Initiative. That's Brian Stevenson's organization. And then also at history.com, the official website of the History Channel, they have information there dealing with the letter from a Birmingham jail also. Okay. All right. I want to go to this last article here. This is from southernliving.com. I saw this back March 15th, 2021. This came out. And this deals with black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. Black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. Okay. Because of Jim Crow segregation laws, civil rights activists and people traveling throughout the South, fighting for the rights that the Constitution said were already ours, couldn't eat wherever they wanted to eat. Okay, but they ate at a lot of African American restaurants that would serve them. Black restaurants that fed the civil rights movement. Okay, this is from southernliving.com. They talk about Dookie Chase's restaurant in New Orleans. And I think I first learned about that. I think I first learned about that from Roland Martin Unfiltered, actually, that Dookie Chase's, because I know he interviewed Leah Chase. I think it's maybe 2018. I interviewed. She died in 2019. The owner, but Leah Chase was the matriarch and driving force behind the restaurant, Dookie Chase's, that she operated with her husband, Edgar Dookie Chase Jr., who died in 2016. So Dookie Chase's offered its customers a fine dining experience among all the white-owned establishments in the city's celebrated French Quarter, yet the Chasers were always very community-minded. The Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, planned for New Orleans to be the final destination for the first Freedom Ride that departed from Washington, D.C. in early May 1961. The Freedom Riders were an interracial group of men and women who rode by bus through the South to test the compliance with the U.S. Supreme Court decision, U.S. Supreme Court decision that desegregated interstate travel. Now, we know John Lewis was one of those Freedom Riders. But the trip was so marred by violence from white protesters that the bus ride was halted in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, the Freedom Riders eventually flew to New Orleans to complete the trip. Dookie Chase's restaurant planned to host a banquet in their honor, continuing a long tradition of supporting civil rights workers. While we don't know what they would have served them that day, we like to think it would have been the Creole gumbo and the fried chicken that still graced the menu. So then you have also Patchell's restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was James and Robert Patchell knew in 1947, they knew their sandwich shop, funded by pooling their savings from jobs like delivering newspapers and shining shoes. They knew their sandwich shop would leave such an important legacy. Okay. It's hard to know whether back in 1947, they knew their sandwich shop would leave such an important legacy. Yet because it was situated in Atlanta, the city where most key civil rights leaders were based, no soul food restaurant is more closely identified with the movement and its leadership. Now, after the business expanded to be Patchell's Motor Hotel and Restaurant, the spot became the unofficial headquarters for civil rights organizers who were drawn in by the good food, especially the fried chicken and the meeting spaces that were offered there. Ebony Magazine noted in a 1979 profile of the Patchell brothers, quote, "It was also at Patchell's in room 501 of the hotel that many, if not most of the civil rights marches were planned. The Patchells also gave free food to protesters who had been arrested, jailed, and made bail." All right, so then next we have Brenda's Barbecue Pit in Montgomery, Alabama. Brenda's Barbecue Pit. So Montgomery, Alabama emerged as one of the civil rights movement's pivotal venues when Rosa Parks, a city resident and secretary of the local branch of the NAACP, refused to give up her seat on a bus to a white man in early December. It was December 1st, 1955. 4 days after her arrest, local African-American residents launched the famous Montgomery bus boycott, December 5th, 1955, which ended December 20th, 1956. And given the intense opposition mounted by Montgomery's white citizens, the logistical achievement of the boycott should not be downplayed. Now, nearing 8 decades in business, Brenda's is Montgomery's oldest Black-owned barbecue restaurant. Geraldine and Larry James Bethune first opened the Siesta Club in 1942. Within a few years, they converted the Siesta Club. They converted that location to serve Q or barbecue. Brenda's support for the civil rights movement runs deep in his DNA and went beyond mere sustenance. Larry Bethune Larry Bethune shared in an interview with the Washington Post that the restaurant provided resources to local NAACP organizers by printing event flyers and offering meeting space, in addition to feeding them. People come in droves to the tiny brick structure in West Montgomery for their barbecued chicken, but we recommend you give the pig's ears a try, they say. Now, I don't eat meat at all, so hopefully they have some vegetarian dishes there or something at Brenda's Brenda's barbecue pit. But hopefully they have some vegetarian dishes, but still support them. Okay. Then you have the world famous Florida Avenue Grill. Okay, that was founded in 1944. The world famous Florida Avenue Grill in Washington, D.C. So Bertha and Lacey Wilson Sr. opened a food stand on the corner of Florida Avenue and 100th, Florida Avenue and 11th Street in the northwest section of Washington, D.C. They named it the Florida Avenue Grill, and it's now the world's oldest continuously operating soul food restaurant. The Florida Avenue Grill is now the world's oldest continuously operating soul food restaurant. It isn't a big place and feels like a shotgun house with tables and booths on one side and a long counter facing the open kitchen on the other. Though white customers have flocked to the restaurant since its earliest days, civil rights leaders still felt comfortable meeting there. Okay, and here's a picture of it. You can sit in the booth where Dr. King ate before the 1963 March on Washington. Okay, man, that is historic. Here's a picture of the world's famous Florida Avenue Grill. So when you visit, ask to be seated in the booth where Dr. King ate and strategized before the 1963 March on Washington. The current owner, Emar Hutchins, who purchased the Florida Avenue Grill from the Wilson family in 2005, follows a plant-based diet, my man. So things like vegetarian sausage were added to the menu in a city that's still marked by the impact of segregation and overrun with gentrification. The Florida Avenue Grill stays true to its founders' legacies and remains a diverse gathering spot. All right, so check out the rest of this article here. This is from southernliving.com, southernliving.com. It's an important piece of history because we talk about the marches and the protests and things like this, okay? But a very important piece of history is the African-American owned restaurants that fed the civil rights leaders and the civil rights activists, the civil rights movement. So check out this piece from southernliving.com for March 15th, 2021. All right. Hey, be sure to follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. We're here 6 days a week. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Or visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and sign up for the email newsletter there also. Be sure to register for the online course that's starting up Saturday, April 24th, 2021. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we'll deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. You can watch from around the world We do the classes live. All the classes are recorded also, so they're archived. So you can go back and watch it over and over again. And if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show, or at our website. And all of my DVD lectures are available at our website also, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have DVD lectures there. We have digital downloads, etc. And we have we still have the DVD bundle pack. It's the Black History Month DVD bundle pack. It's 15 of my lectures. It's on sale $100. It's a ton of information in that one. Okay, the Michael M. Hotep Black History Month DVD bundle pack. So you can check that out also. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you Monday night. Peace. Thanks for tuning in.